You're listening to The New Paris. I'm your host, Lindsay Tremuta. How was everyone's January? Did you make it a dry one? Like many people living in France, I took a break from alcohol during the imported milestone of Dry January, which they pronounce Dry January, as I heard earlier today. But now we're in February, and 2 wine fairs have brought wine lovers and wine pros to the city for talks, tastings, and buying. Wine consumption, though, has been dropping steadily in France, and sales have declined since the 1970s. But if I were to judge from my interactions with readers, fellow Parisians, and clients who take my tour, wine is still very much front of mind when they visit and go out in Paris. So what's happening here? How are people drinking? Are they drinking? What's the deal with natural wine today? And where should people go to drink well in Paris if they're going to do so? I wanted to get a sense from someone whose career has been built around reporting the ins and outs of wine and our relationship to it. Alicia Dorey is a wine journalist who writes regularly for Figaro and the author of a book that offers a personal and philosophical look at, of all things, intoxication. Let's get into it. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been on the road quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky to have you here in Paris for
I'm
30 minutes.
Always in between the two destinations.
It's kind of a nice life.
Yeah, it is.
But you're always looking for a new story. And obviously we are in the country of wine, so there's a lot that you can do here without even leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, for a very long time, actually, when I was working at Le Figaro, I was mainly going to France, like to every region. And then now that I'm freelance again, I travel way more because I think that even if French people are very focused on French wines, there are like so many places to discover, and but we don't find the wines here. So
no, I was just at all the month of February. There's an Austrian wine pop-up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and I had no idea that less than 1% of Austrian wines are exported to France, and maybe it's that relationship between France and Austro-Hungary.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same with German wines because there is a huge trend. I was in the United States like a few weeks ago, and I saw that so many different German wines and Riesling, and like they are so good. And in France, you cannot like find them. I don't know if it's like some kind of political
Wouldn't be surprising, right?
No.
The French do everything best. No.
Yeah. No, yeah. They consider that. Like today, they consider that Italians are like making good wines, but it's only the beginning. It's weird,
and it's taken a long time, to get to that point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you used to be on staff at Le Figaro, but you still do a lot of writing for them and other publications, and you are specialized in wine, but you do other stories. I'm assuming you got into this line of work because you are passionate about wine. Was there a moment you can recall that kind of confirmed for you that there was a career to be made as a wine journalist?
Yeah, like I discovered wine quite late at the age of 26, and so that was 10 years ago. And before that, I wasn't interested in alcohol. I was the one bringing cider to parties. Yeah, really. And I used to write about cultural travel and a bit about gastronomy. And then I met, my ex-boyfriend, and he was passionate about wine. And the first time he cooked for me, he made me taste Saint-Joseph from the domaine d'Arrée-Ribot, dans la Vallée du Rhône. And it was like a revelation. I didn't know that a wine could be like so intense, so vibrant, and I thought to myself, I want this to be my job. And I started getting into wine, and I learned by drinking mainly and by going to visiting winemakers. And I have no formal training in sommelier studies or enology. And but I discovered a very rich world. And when I was 33, I was working as a freelance for Le Figaro Voyage, and one day a position for editor-in-chief of the wine department opened, and I applied and I got the job. So, but that was I don't know how to say, vertigineux.
Right, it's like one thing led to another.
Yeah. And I quickly realized that I had to get a better knowledge of Bordeaux and Champagne, because I wouldn't, I had like beaucoup de lacunes, I don't know.
Oh, like some gaps.
Yeah, some gaps. And then I discovered that it was a very like predominantly male and quite traditional field, and that the way wine was discussed in newspaper was far too intimidating. So I thought to myself that there's a place to carve out as a young, self-taught woman. And then, since I didn't grow up in a family like focused on wine, I had no preconceived notions. Like I was not like Burgundy team or or Bordeaux team. And I approached wine through storytelling. And I don't know, my writing was more literary. So and I had a certain like innocence, and I think that was what resonated with people.
And so that led to covering the entire section for a number of years, and then you went freelance to be able to do other types of stories as well.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a big shift pre-COVID, during COVID, and then now sort of whatever this period is, if it's really post-COVID or whatever. But we just finished Dry January, which is something that really has sort of taken off in France in the last handful of years. And it didn't begin here, but it has certainly found an audience here.
Yeah.
And wine consumption in much of the West seems to be declining, and French wine exports are declining. So in your reporting, what are you discovering about what's at play here? Like, why is this happening? And is it a symptom of sort of this like moral panic that we're all consuming something that's poisoning us? Or like, as if that's new?
Yeah, I understand the need to question the relationship we have with alcohol, but I can see it's somehow like hypocritical. And either alcohol is dangerous and should be banned, just like other drugs, or we consider that I consider that there's no need to infantilize citizens and instead like trust them to manage their consumption, as long as they are not like a danger to others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is some kind of paternalistic norm that must be clearly distinguished from excessive consumptions. And there's no need to regulate people's habit to the point of telling them, you are going to stop playing with this.
Right,
you know what I mean? And I think this is the influence of commercial trends originating from the Anglo-Saxon world. Just like Halloween and Valentine's Day and Black Friday, for instance.
The worst. So you mean Dry January is like
coming
January from the Anglo world?
Yeah, really. And
must be the Puritanism.
Yeah, in some way, and it's quite hypocritical because you know that like United States is a country of excess, and in England you have like hooliganism. So like it's on one way they so I think this is it's very weird. I don't think it's related to our Latin culture. I think in Spain, in Italy, in France, we have this like other kind of way of drinking.
So do you think that Dry January works because it's just a moment for people to question their behaviors?
Yeah, I think people are driven with like fear, and it's this kind of a nudge kind of strategy. And I'm not telling that it's some kind of plot, but I just think that for commercial reasons, the industry is trying to like make people like being afraid of dying or losing control. And when they're ready and they're very afraid, they're going to sell them like non-alcoholic beverages,
right?
Just like sodas, but they are like sugar bombs. So
yeah, you did a story about that recently, right?
Yeah.
How these alternatives are not necessarily healthier for you. It's not, maybe not comparable, but they're still unhealthy in a different way.
In a different way, yeah. And people tend to, even kombucha. I mean, like we held it like a wonderful, and it is wonderful, but it's full of sugar, most of them. And we know that sodas are not like very good for your health. So yeah.
No. Interesting. So you don't think this is necessarily a lasting phenomenon here?
I think the new generation is going to drink less and less. But the thing is that I think it's also related to the way we show the image we have of ourselves today, it's very narcissist. And today you want to, you put your face on Instagram, on TikTok, and so it's not the same as it used to be. Now your image is, the first thing you care about.
Right. So you want to show that you're this like example of health and purity and virtue and right. Okay, interesting. Are there other trends that you see happening in France or emerging in terms of drinking culture?
Well, I think in France we are realizing that alcohol and especially wine is an integral part of our daily lives. It's deeply tied to key moments of meals, family gathering, friendship, romantic encounters. And I think this year and in the years to come, the trend toward moderation seems to be most evident. And we see in restaurants, even the pairings alternating between alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages. We can see also dry dating. I don't know if you've seen, there is this survey published by Bumble, the
yes,
app.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that the new generation, millennial and Generation Z, I think it's 1 out of 3 who has decided not to drink at all for a first date, just not to lose control.
For first date, okay.
So it is the dry dating. And I think it goes up to 40% of women who decide not to drink, just not to lose control and not to be, we said, vulnerable. So I think this is one big trend. I think the new generation is going to drink less and less, but maybe drink better. We always say that. I don't know if it's a real trend.
Right. It's like buy better, buy less, buy better.
Yeah.
Are they really doing it? I don't know.
I'm not sure, because when you go to bars, not in our small world of natural wine, I don't know, young people, they don't drink they drink.
No, they're drinking garbage, basically.
Yeah. So
cheap garbage.
Cheap garbage, yeah. And I think another interesting trend is a kind of convergence between the conventional wine world, which is striving to become cleaner, and the reassessment of natural wine in its more extreme and flawed forms, which have significantly damaged its reputation. So today, I think that wine lovers are looking for to drink better, but the wine still has to be good. I mean, all of the flaws we could find in natural wines. I think now even the new generation of winemakers, they're trying to maybe sulfur, they are less
radical,
wild and radical. Yeah. So maybe I'm being optimistic, but I tend to believe that we're moving toward overall improvement and the kind of harmonization with the very traditional, trying to be cleaner, with putting less sulfites, and trying to be more conscious about this, and on the other way, the more extreme that are trying to live up to something more classic in some way.
Less funky, which is the word that people I guess are sick of, but I think it really does a good job of explaining that sort of unstable, wild flavor that really some drinkers reject.
Yeah.
I mean, I lead these tasting tours that are inspired by my book, and I was with clients yesterday, and we were finishing with natural wine, and we were talking about what that is and what they like. And actually, one of the two said she actually likes that barnyard smell and taste, which is something I can't stand, and just our palates are so different.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's interesting to see, okay, well, from a natural winemaker's perspective, how do you reach some sort of balance?
Yeah, and even I think young sommeliers sometimes I go to a restaurant and I don't tell them that I'm a wine journalist, and I just listen to them, and they are just considering that this default is just something good. They're this is how wine should be, and I'm yeah, I think that it's bad for natural wine reputation. And this is why my next book about wine will be about I don't know if you could say that in English, but straight natural wines, and the
droit.
And the topic of the book is to talk about wine that will never disappoint you. I know this is quite antithetic with what you should expect from natural wine, because it has to be different on every bottle.
Right.
But then at the same time, you could expect to have at least some kind of, balance between...
Some features have to be the same.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. A lot to discuss there, because I remember distinctly a time when you would go to restaurants and, you could tell that they were just jumping on a movement and they didn't actually know if a bottle was bad or just a little funky.
Yeah.
That's complicated for consumers, especially wine drinkers who are very rigid in their choices, and you want to try to get them to experience something else. And if that first impression is lousy, they're never going to touch it again.
You lose them.
Like my father-in-law, but he's in his early 80s, so I think he gets a pass. but there are other diners much younger, or drinkers, much younger, who are not going to give it a second chance.
Yeah, and the idea of my next book was that it's like my publisher asked me, what is the question you have the most? And one of the questions I have the most is, where should I start with natural wine? Like, what should I drink? I don't know, like, which ones, because this is something paradoxical with natural wines. Some of them have, like, funky labels, and like, so you see that there.
Yeah.
But today it's very difficult because some very conventional are going to play with these codes, and they're going to have, like, funky labels, but they're not natural at all.
Oh, interesting.
And some very natural wine are not, like, certified organically. They have, like, really, like, like old school labels. So you have to be an insider to know. And this is where I have a responsibility, and where, like, I like to do my job because of that, because I want to taste, like, many, many things and be able to tell to people, well, this one looks very classic, but it's one of the most vibrant and natural you can find. And this is, like, this should go to garbage. So, like, that's the thing. And I think it's what makes our jobs interesting.
Sure. I mean, the public really, to give you an example, and this is where I'm hoping you will jump in as well, there is still a misunderstanding about what natural wine is.
Yeah.
And so, my listeners may have discovered my sort of definition in the New Paris, but what are you telling your readers if they don't understand, like, what makes it natural? Is that just sort of an umbrella term? What does it mean? Well,
there is no, like, certification, but the definition would be, like, to me, it's a wine made with, like, minimal intervention, both in the vineyard and in the cellar. Because sometimes people, like, tend to, like, they are not sure between, like, organic and natural wines. But organic is just in the vineyards. And then I think what makes a wine natural, he's really in the cellar also. Like, it typically comes from organically or biodynamically farmed grapes, harvested by hand usually, and fermented with native yeasts rather than commercial ones. And in the cellar, winemakers avoid, like, additives such as sulfites and enzymes and artificial stabilizers, and they refrain from, like, processes like filtration, or not all of them, but most of them, and heavy manipulation. To me, the goal of natural wine is to express the purest, like, essence of the grape. Yeah, that's
a perfect definition.
I try.
No, it's because, it's not a regulated term.
No, you have, like, a certification named, I don't know, the label is Vin Méthode Nature. But the thing is, like, it gathers, like, not all of them, because, like, we see the natural wine world as a whole scene, but it's like a whole scene with, like, many, many different, clans inside it. So it's...
Well, and they don't agree amongst each other about what is and isn't natural.
Yeah, you have the Ayatollahs who, like, they don't want to have, like, any sulfites, but then it makes, like, and usually the wines are exported, like, everywhere in the world. So I don't know, I travel a lot, and when I drink some of the wines I used to love in France, and I would drink them in Japan or elsewhere, like, it's complete mess, because
by the time it arrives there, there's nothing to stabilize it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
and we know that, some businesses, especially in the restaurant world here in Paris, are now closing, right? Like we managed to get through COVID, and I'm starting to see more businesses decide to close shop now, and not just in Paris, other places. And that's not just restaurants, it's coffee shops, it's people who are just like, it's our time.
Yeah.
Bars, however, here seem full. There seem to be new bars kind of regularly.
Yeah,
Maybe
and wine shops.
And wine shops. Yes, so many wine shops.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering, what do you make of our options in Paris today? Are there, and the ones that you love personally, how are they doing?
Well, I think that like wine shops and bars, like after COVID, it was like this kind of golden age of like everyone wanted to go everywhere and, forget about this nightmare. And, but I think today, like the one that are going to manage to stay open, it's when they have vintages and a real like charismatic like owner. And I don't know, like I used to work for Le Fooding, and I think that the fooding has contributed to a kind of standardization, like even in terms of atmosphere and like interior design. And so it seems that a lot of wine bars today are looking alike, and they have the same wine selection. So I think the ones that are really interesting today are the ones that have worked on a very specific kind of selection and with vintages, because people want to drink. The one I like today are this one, the one who look like bistros more.
Okay.
And we see that the bistro cuisine is it's back. So I think this is kind of the same in the wine bar. I think for the wine geeks, the best natural wine bar is a bar, from the outside, you cannot even know that
it's a bar.
That it's a natural wine bar.
Oh, natural wine bar.
Yeah.
So what is that for you? What are a couple that you really love?
I love, I don't know if you could say that it's a natural wine bar, but I love Les Caves Le Grand. Because to me, it's really first it's beautiful.
In the Galerie Vivienne.
Yeah, and they have a very wide selection. If we talk about natural, I would say Vivant. Vivant, Deviant. It's
the restaurant and then the bar next door called Deviant.
I think they have a very good selections. And I love Augustin Marchand de Vin.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's very cozy and it looks like some kind of shady speakeasy. I don't know. It's and he has a really good selection of.
That's on the left bank.
Of Jura and Italy, and every time he doesn't even have a wine list. He just this is what I love. When you really love wine, you don't want to have a huge book. A huge wine list, it looks like a encyclopedia. You just want to trust.
It's funny because we have a mutual friend who hates when you go to a bar and they're just like, no, just tell me what you're interested in and I'll recommend something, as though they're the expert,
I agree.
And he, given his knowledge, is sort of very suspicious of that.
Yeah.
He's like, I just want to at least see some of what you have. Even if I'm going to end up putting my trust in you, I want to know what you got. And again, this could be just a different level of exigence, as we say. I don't know. I just find it amusing to drink with him and
yeah. No, that's true.
He reacts to that dynamic with a server or a sommelier who looks like they're 12.
Yeah. I think this is one of the bias. When I see someone younger than I am and telling me oh, I'm the list, I'm like,
exactly.
Oh really? You are the list.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's the problem, I think. I think mostly what he's reacting to.
Yeah.
But speaking of Le Fooding, your point is a very interesting one, because I wrote an essay for the Fooding's new guide. Unfortunately, it's only in French, but about the enduring appeal of the Parisian bistro in America. And I actually spoke to our mutual friend, John Bonnet, who's been a guest of the show several times, about the various evolutions, and he's been there for most of them.
Yeah.
And we talked about the influence of La Buvette and Septime Cave, specifically on New York City icons like the Four Horsemen, when, there was a period after the economic crash where American restaurant owners and bar owners started coming back to Paris and just being like, yes, this is what we want. And we want to transport that to New York.
Yeah.
Do you think Paris is still a source of inspiration for a lot of these? You were just in New York, you saw a lot of things. Do you think
Yeah.
that's still a model?
Yeah. I was in New York like 3 weeks ago, and I noticed that France is still like a major reference when it comes to wine bars. And in some places, you'd think that you were in the 10th arrondissement of
really?
Paris.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost a caricature. I've been to like new open places, and I really felt like I was in Paris. And the only difference is that the wines are like 5 times more expensive.
Huge
And
problem.
and then again, which is good. It's the selection is we said like it's wider because you can find like wines from Catalonia, like South Africa, and like they are more like open-minded. I was laughing going to Claude in the Lower East Side because I think it's really like emblematic of the New York like passion about like French
Paris,
wine bars. Yeah. Like the wine list, it was like first it was 2 categories: France and everything else grouped at the bottom under like the ban not France. And I think like it tells a lot about the influence of the French model. It's actually quite rare that to see it happen in this direction because usually we are Americanized, but in this particular section I think it's the other
well, it
way.
is called Claude, right? I guess they're
Claude.
trying to be French.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a funny way of categorizing.
Yeah. But I think it's very funny. I think it's kind of like some kind of provocation.
Yeah, tongue in cheek a bit, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you think Paris still?
Yeah. In terms of image, yeah, really. And I was with John, our mutual friend, so I was, people were very nice to me. But even in other countries, when I go to places and people like have like looked up before,
who you are,
yeah, I'm like I'm the French wine person,
yeah,
and it's so funny.
You're on a throne.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like it doesn't happen here. I mean, people don't care.
Well, it keeps you humble.
Yeah,
right?
Course. Yeah.
Speaking of humble, you don't need to be humble about this. You wrote a wonderfully respected book called À nos ivresses, which I guess sort of roughly translates to an ode to our intoxications or our inebriations. Or how would you say it? Right? Like one of those?
Yeah.
And it's only available in French for the moment, but it will be coming out in other languages. What do you cover in this book? Is it strictly about alcoholic intoxications?
No, yeah. So, like for now, it has been translated into Spanish, and it will soon be available in Italian and Korean, but unfortunately not in English yet. But it's we're working on it.
Good.
And the idea behind this book was to offer like a fresh perspective on ivresse, which is often mistakenly seen as a dangerous state or like a prelude to alcoholism. But I still believe that it's a fascinating state, and when you know how to navigate it, and one that opens doors to like many encounters, and including with yourself. Like I discovered like a new me by discovering this. Like before that, I didn't drink alcohol, so I was always lucid in some way.
So before the age of what, like 26?
Yeah, I would only drink sometime out of like politeness, just to be polite. And so in the book, I explore the theme of intoxication through like different lenses. So like travel, the body, the gender, love, family, like many different themes. Plays a very specific role in each of these aspects of our life, I think. And I wanted to portray it in a way that is less like demonized and gentler, and above all, like more luminous, and without encouraging, like excessive conceptions. And I also emphasize that there is a fine line and a delicate balance that must be reassessed with every new glass, which is why the book subtitle is "Every Glass is a First Time."
Interesting. I love that.
And I would even add that every glass is also a last time, because that's what I love about wine. It's this moment and never again. Like if we have a drink today, and even if we drink tomorrow the exact same wine, you will have change, I will have change. We won't have had the same day, and that kind of feeling is what like makes you feel like alive. And at first I was afraid of how it would be received, the book, because it was my first essay, so I didn't know at all. And but like it got very positive press coverage, and what was surprising, it was like on the left press and right press, it was like two different interpretation. Like for the right, it was like, yeah, someone like, you know, is not going into this like hygienist thing, and from the left wing, it was more like, oh, finally a woman, you know, like takes the thing. So it was very funny to like see that.
But there's something very philosophical about that take, and really quite special to consider that, you know, the glass that I had last night, and if I had the same thing today, yeah, I guess you don't necessarily consider that you are technically a different version of yourself the next day because of all the other factors that have occurred in 12, 24 hours. I don't think we think about it in such detail.
Not really. Like I had the time to think about it, and the thing is, like even like it distorts in some way your relationship to time and your temporality. I don't know how you could say that, because when you start drinking, like time flies, and you know you look at your watch and it's already like midnight or 1 or so. Yeah, like what moved me the most though is that where the like all the messages and the letters I received afterwards, like especially from women telling me they found the book courageous, but I think it was just mostly reckless. You know, I didn't.
You thought it was reckless?
No, like people were telling me, oh, it's very courageous to write, like because I give a lot of like my story in this. But afterwards, I thought like no, like I didn't even. You know, by writing, I was thinking, oh, maybe my parents will read it. But I didn't even, you know, and realize that a lot of people were going to read it.
Yeah.
So, like, even now, I meet people sometimes and they're like, oh, so in 2006, you, I don't know, you had sex for the first time or something. And I was like, yeah, oh, they read my book.
You're like, oh, yeah, I did say that, didn't I?
yeah. So, but I don't know. And most movement told me that it helped them to feel less guilty, and like it was very like emotional in some way. And this is why I'm going to launch this new series for Madame Figaro about women and alcohol, because we don't really talk about that. It's a huge taboo still. Like
you think in France in particular it's still taboo?
Yeah, because from like when we are very young, we already hear that c'est pas beau une femme qui boit. It's not beautiful a woman who drinks. And even I mean, like I'm making my auto like criticism. It's even when I see a guy having some kind of behavior, I will find it funny. If a woman has the same behavior, I will be, you know, uncomfortable. Even if I'm a woman, and even if I have like thought a lot
about
this subject.
This issue,
I still have this kind of automatism. So I think it's interesting to kind of see why and how like women has to restrain from alcohol, and men. And a guy who, in France, a guy who doesn't drink, he's seen as, you know, some kind of feminine, you know, or like not male kind of. It's a very Latin country still.
Yeah, so, this is true. You're right.
Yeah.
I sometimes forget that. But you've also, what we were talking about before we started recording was in the wine world too, and in wine reporting, the effect on that, the job's effect on women, you know, who have come before you, and how few women are actually writing about wine.
Yeah.
What are you noticing?
Yeah, like lately I was kind of worried to see that my one of my how do you say consoeurs,
like, peers?
Yeah, peers from the journal Le Monde. She just stopped writing about wine because she said like I can't take it anymore. You know, it makes me sick, and she has become some kind of allergic to wine. And then there is another one at Libération. She stops also. And they are a bit older than I am. I'm 36. So I'm like, well, I really have to be careful about that. So even you can play on the social media and make people think that you're drinking and going out all the time, but it's not true. Actually, it requires a lot of discipline.
Well, and tastings. If you're really just doing tastings, do you have to drink the whole glass?
Yeah, no.
Are you?
No. I spit all the time.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of my career, I couldn't really spit because people wanted to, test me in some way. So I would spit for tastings, but I didn't dare to spit for lunches and dinners. But now it's not that it would be very like to say that I don't have anything to prove anymore. It's not true, but people know that I know how to taste, and so now I even spit for in dinner, like professional dinners. And which is funny is now I at the end of before I leave, I just take my crachoir spitter, and I'm always amazed by the weight of the thing. And I'm like, wow, this is everything I didn't
put in your body.
Put in my body. So it happened a year ago. I did that, and now I do it automatically. And I'm like, oh yeah, lucky me, because it's so bad for your body in this intensity.
Right. A glass here and there is very different from what it would look like if you were to drink at every occasion that you're.
Yeah, and this is I'm very lucky because I could have very exceptional wine every day. And if I go to La Romanée Conti, he doesn't care that I went to Chave or Auvernois the day before. He just wants me to drink his wine. So it's always hard diplomatically to manage and to say, oh no, I had too much yesterday. So you have to balance, and this is the hardest thing, I think.
So you're about to leave on another reporting trip. So I want to just get one last question in, which is, you named a couple of places you like: Devian, Vivant, Cave Le Grand, Augustin, Marchand de Vin, which is great. Maybe the last question then is sort of, what listeners who are going to come to Paris and order wine, is there something you think they should be asking? Is there a question or a way of trying to understand more of this natural thing? I tend to tell people that the word funky is at least understood, and even in French, funky, But is there another way that consumers or clients at a restaurant or bar can better control what they might be served, or have it better suited to them?
Well, I think if you want to not be disappointed, you have to ask for. I see the natural wine wars you have 2, maybe 3 generations, and I think the first generation of Pacalais, Chave, and La Pierre, and they made mistakes, and then now they're considered as somehow trader, because they have become more classic in their way of making wines, or the generation after them. And I think that when you go, for instance, to Le Comptoir des Résistants, they
in the 10th,
they have a wide selection. They have new funky wines, but they also have Gonon. They have very. I think at first you should go for the classic natural wines. I think it's if you can find them, because they're becoming rare. But I think that would be my advice, would be to not go for the young funky ones at first. You can go in funky afterwards, but you have to try. I was lucky. I started with Daré-Ribot, because it can be funky sometimes, but it's still very well made. And I think when you have this wine, you realize that it's very different from conventional wines that are kind of plain and no emotion, and you discover a whole new world to me. So
someone could go into one of these bars or go to Le Comptoir des Résistants and say, what's the sort of more classic natural? They can ask it in that way.
Yeah, they can say even straight. I want something straight. Yeah. Sometimes sommelier are annoyed by this, but they know what you mean. So I think it would be the best way. And then you're sure that you're going to have something exquisite.
Well, I think that's excellent advice. And I think you're going to have to come back and talk more about your series on women in wine when you start, or women in alcohol when you start reporting.
Yes,
so, but for now,
pleasure.
Alicia, thank you for
so much
coming by.
That was great. Thank you.
That's the show for today. Thanks for listening, as always. If you're streaming this on Spotify, be sure to check out a little poll that awaits you pertaining to this discussion. Just scroll down on the episode page within the app and vote. And if you enjoy the show, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, share with a friend, and pick up the books that inspired it, The New Paris and The New Parisienne. Until next time, à bientôt.